Good morning, dear friends, and welcome to the main object big book study of Alcoholics Anonymous. I am an alcoholic. My name is David. Hello, blessing to be here with all of you once again. And we'll start things off. I'm going to ask our friend Kathy M. to read the AA preamble.
Morning, everybody. This is AA's preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
Thank you so much, Kathy. I appreciate that. And now I'm going to ask if you would join me in, we'll do the Serenity Prayer. And I don't know why I never remember this, but I'll remember it today. I'm remembering it today is, why don't we take a moment of silence for the still suffering alcoholic in and out of the room? And then the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Okay, so what we're about here, most people know this, but just in case you don't, we are a line-by-line big book study, so we go very slowly through the book. The purpose is to really unlock our text and turn it into a powerful tool that we can use to guide our own spiritual journey through the 12 steps and learn a new way perhaps of relating to our program and sharing our experience, strength, and hope. One of the things that we do in order to really open the book up for ourselves and others is to think of the text as we go along in 5 categories, and there you see them: questions, directions and explanations, promises, warnings, and history. And then the colors are the highlighter colors I use, and that really and we'll be posting that, so don't worry if you didn't get that. That'll be in the chat. And so what that does is it really unlocks the text and turns it into what has been for me a powerful reference manual. Our format is that I'll share for about 25 minutes, and then we'll open it up at near the top of the hour for your thoughts and your thoughts and insights and questions and so forth. And then just also FYI, the meeting is being recorded because we have an archive on YouTube, so people can listen. Only my part is recorded, just be careful if people are a little queasy about having their thoughts or comments put out there. So just be aware of that. And also, I always mention this at the end, or sometimes I forget. We have a weekly reminder text that goes out too. There's a system sends it out automatically every Saturday afternoon around 12:30 Eastern time. And it has the Zoom link to the meeting. It also has the link to the YouTube archive. If you'd like to be on that list, just leave me a chat message with your cell phone number, and I will add you on that. And as I said earlier today, we're on chapter 5, How It Works. We are on page 61 at the bottom. And just to sort of summarize where we've come and where we're going today. So, as most of us know, at the beginning of chapter 5, Bill presents what we call How It Works, which is the concise overview of the 12-step solution. So Bill has done that. We are moving on now, and Bill is now presenting us. He's really laid the solution out there, and now he takes a step back and takes a deeper dive, and I would say a pretty unflinching look. And really, he was really taking the gloves off now and getting to the heart of our disease, an unflinching analysis of the underlying cause of our alcoholism. And he first introduces this through a series of questions that we went through last week. But rather than leaving us guessing, Bill now gets to the heart of the matter by declaring that our underlying dilemma is the result of us being egocentric. Now, that term is fairly common to us today. We hear it everywhere, and especially in AA meetings. When Bill was writing in 1935, that was a rather new term. It really only came into popular use in the 1920s. And it actually was a psychological term, and it referred to the development of children. And the egocentric stage is a stage that it's not an adult stage; it's a childhood stage. And and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. Basically, he's saying we're stunted emotionally and psychologically. How dare he? The ultimate point Bill makes is that our disease renders us incapable of focusing on anything except, as he says, ourselves, our resentments, and our self pity. And the sad result is that we end up living through, again, as he says, 100 forms of fear, self delusion, self seeking, and self pity. And this in turn makes our lives these endless dramas of conflict, misunderstanding, and isolation. So, given these deeply ingrained habits that we have for self justification and self delusion, our only solution, he points out, is through a spiritual conversion and an ongoing relationship with a higher power. I'll come back to that. Okay, so I was going to make a point, but I figure why not dive into the text and then I'll come back to my point. So at the bottom of 61, we're starting with the paragraph that says, our actor is self-centered. And remember, as we were talking about, he was talking about the, previous to this, he was talking about the actor who wants to run the whole show, not the director who runs the whole show and determines how things are designed, but just one of the actors. So our actor is self-centered, egocentric, as people like to call it nowadays. And again, that was a rather novel term in the day. I put some links in there, and it first came into use in 1910, and then but really it was not in the public, I guess you say lexicon or public dialogue until the 1920s, when some of you may have heard about this guy. There was a psychologist or a psychiatrist back then named Jean Piaget, and the thing that Piaget did that was very unique is that he really analyzed and made known the system, the psychological system through which children develop and the stages they go through. He listed it as a series of stages. And one of the earliest stages that children experience, and parents probably know this, in early on, the terrible twos. And part of he didn't call it that. He had other names for it. But one of the aspects of this stage was egocentrism, meaning that they can only see the world through their own experience and their own self-interest, such that no one else and nothing else matters or really exists except themselves. And now for children, this is a necessary part of development and ego formation. What Bill is pointing out is, guys, we should have moved on from this a long, long time ago, but we have not. So, by the way, forgive me, all of this paragraph through to the bottom of the page, except for the last sentence in the paragraph on the next page, it's all warning. So it's in pink. Our actor is self-centered, egocentric, as people now like to call it nowadays. And then he gives examples. He is like the retired businessman who lolls in the Florida sunshine in the winter, complaining of the sad state of the nation. The minister who sighs over the sins of the 20th century. Politicians and reformers who are sure all would be utopia if the rest of the world would only behave. The outlaw safecracker who thinks society has wronged him. And then he really drives it home. And the alcoholic who has lost all and is locked up. And then he poses it's a rhetorical question, but it really gets to the heart of the matter. Whatever our protestations, are not most of us concerned with ourselves, our resentments, or our self-pity? One of the things, and I won't dwell on this too much, but I think it bears pointing out, is Bill wrote this in 1935. Most of us, 1939, or maybe 38, but around that time, late 30s. We lived in a much more social society at that point. Since Bill wrote this, society in general has become more egocentric, more self-driven. And again, we could go on at length about the problems with that. So, but for us, what it really does, and we talked a little about this last week, what it really demands is that as alcoholics, to have recovery, it means moving away from the ways of the world and adopting the way of life, the design for living that Bill is laying out in this book. So whatever our protestations, as I read, are not most of us concerned with ourselves, our resentments, or our self-pity. And now he really just, he's plunging the knife in, and now he twists it. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. One of the things I wanted to point out, just in case, he's getting to the heart of our issue. It's interesting, there's one word that you might think would be on this page, but it's nowhere to be found on page 62. And that word is alcohol. I could be wrong. I could be missing it. But I do not believe the word alcohol is on this page. Now, does that mean our disease has nothing to do with alcohol? No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is he talks about a life of conflict, misunderstanding, isolation. And for us as alcoholics, the only solution when we are embedded in the disease is the comfort we experience after taking a few drinks. The doctor's opinion talks about that. So there is a direct link to alcohol. But what they're saying is, what Bill is saying here is alcohol is a result. Here is the underlying cause. So let's move deeper into this. As he said, we think is the root of our troubles. By the way, this entire paragraph, top of 62, is all warning, so it's all pink. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. So just in case there's any doubt, Bill really starts to connect the dots here. And what he is saying is, now he says we are locked in this childhood stage of development where we are only capable of seeing the world as it relates to us. And some of the symptoms of that are self-delusion, which is an act of believing something that is not true about ourselves. And we talked a little bit last week about delusion. And delusion is an actual clinical term. It is a negative, destructive belief that grows stronger the more it is disproven. Self-seeking, that is a fixation on one's own advantage in everything that one does. Self-pity, which is self-directed sadness, resulting from a belief that one is disadvantaged or has been treated unfairly. And again, those will be in the chat. I think they're in the chat already, and they will also be in the video notes when we put that up. So we're stuck here. And notice also, folks, and here's something that's a little bit scary, because he's not linking this directly to drinking. Drinking is the result. The other piece of this is that by removing drinking, what we're removing is we're removing drunkenness, we're removing intoxication, but we are not removing self delusion, the 100 forms of fear, self delusion, self seeking, and self pity. Sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that at some time in the past, we have made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. He doesn't talk about it here, but I'll just share from my own experience very briefly. When I did even my most recent inventory work, what really amazed me was, even after being sober for decades, my complete inability at times to connect the dots between actions and consequence. So when he talks about making decisions in the past which later placed us in a position to be hurt, it's quite, at least for myself as an alcoholic, it was quite easy to have a lot of time under my belt and still at certain points be self-deluded as to the cause of certain unfortunate conditions or circumstances in my life. But here he drives it home in the next paragraph, and the first two sentences are warning. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. Now, I think Bill really understands or understood the alcoholic, because he doesn't say this on page 1. He had to sort of work his way into this because he knows he's dealing with these alcoholics who are can be frequently very childish. And so rather than point the finger at us right from the get-go, he really takes his time to lay out the case. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves. And the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot. And the next is the phrase that, for some strange reason, that still baffles me to this day when I speak. Every time I speak with my sponsor, this next phrase always works its way into the conversation for some strange reason. I have no idea what he's trying to get to, but he's saying, as the text says, though he usually doesn't think so. Meaning, I'm an extreme example of self-will run riot, though I usually don't think so. Because we're masters of self-justification. And just FYI, this term, which for us is quite common, self-will run riot, when I did some searching on this, it is Bill sort of coined that term. The origin of that term is this passage right here. And then there's a definition there on it: a state of being obsessed with one's own desires and needs to the point where the individual is willing to do anything to get what they want, even if it means hurting themselves or others. And then next, we have direction, important direction. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. And then another warning: we must, or it kills us. But then we have a promise. God makes that possible. And there is often no way, and there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without His aid. So those two sentences are promises. Now, one of the things that when he talks about this self-delusion and when he talks about the need for a relationship with God, one of the scary things that I discovered is that once I got sober, one of the things I was most self-deluded about was my relationship with God and how God was operating in my life and the result of that. And so what it real and I'm just he doesn't get into it here. He talks about it more in the 12 and 12. But I'll mention that's why it's really critical, at least in my own sobriety, to have an intermediary between me and God, meaning a sponsor. Someone who can be sort of a physical higher power that can help me cultivate and maintain my relationship to the divine higher power. So moving on. Many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them even though we would have liked to. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. And that is all warning. And then direction. We had to have God's help. Excuse me. And that is direction. And because well, actually we're at time. We're at 7:01 right now. So I'm gonna end it right there. So we only went almost exactly a page, and which is a little less than we normally do, but I did that on purpose because I think there is so much meat right here. And so what I would like to do now is turn it over to you. Open